J Shrek, Finish Strong podcast, a spiritual solution to a world in crisis. And we're ready to go today. I hope everybody's fired up. We get to talk about something today that I'm very excited about. And that is, as you see, history. Maybe not necessarily mad history, but history. And to do that, we're going to bring in Mr. C.H. Charlie Smith and see what he's got going on today in the world as we know it. Mr. Smith, what's up today?
J Shrek. Excited to be here. We're gonna get after it today. This is a good topic.
You sounded fired up yesterday, so you're just carrying that over in today, which is awesome.
Oh, so I love you're wearing the Mad History shirt. Shout out to your channel. I also have on a shirt that has significance here. It's called Run Steep, Get High. It's a running club here in race club in Arizona, and I got a ram in the background and a ram here. So we're ready to roll. We're going to talk a little bit about the high ground. But before we get into that, let's talk about the rules. So we go 28 minutes, then we flash the 2-minute warning, and then we close it out. We try to stay right around 30 minutes on this podcast. Like and subscribe if you like the content that we have going. And then a special shout out to one of our number one fans. I want to recognize somebody.
Who is
this? This is my Aunt Ruth from upstate New York. Did you know there's 2 states in New York? There's the city in upstate New York.
It's kind of like I learned in New Jersey. There's 2 New Jerseys. There's the Jersey, and then there's the New Jersey, and they're basically completely different places.
Yes, completely different people. So, hey, I just want to shout out to my Aunt Ruth. She's probably one of the most welcoming people. You know, we talk about, you know, a spiritual solution and a way to live your life. I think of somebody that's welcoming, and I can't think of anybody that she's basically the model of that. And everybody needs a Aunt Ruth in their life.
I definitely agree with that. And to Aunt Ruth, I give a great big salute and welcome. I'm glad she's here. I hope she will be here. So tell me about the high ground.
Yeah, so we had discussed this, and it's kind of been on my heart about playing from the high ground. I was talking in a few podcasts back about you can really do some stuff once you get on the high ground. So we're going to talk about the high ground and low ground, and where I learned about the high ground and low ground and how to play from the high ground in life. So we're going to use the Gettysburg Battle. And
we're going Civil War.
Yeah, today. We're going to go Civil War, about 90 miles away from Washington, D.C., in the foothills of the Appalachia. Beautiful area if you've ever been there. But I had a chance to go to a leadership training there. I used to work for a Fortune 500 company out of Baltimore. And the things I've learned kind of stuck with me. It was the best training I've ever been to because I got to walk the battlefield, learn about strategy and stuff. We incorporated that into business. And one of the things that I really stuck with me is this whole concept of playing from the high ground versus playing from the low ground. And we'll get into that, and we'll talk about the history of why that is important, specifically strategically from the battleground. And then I'll come back and I'll ask you some questions because I feel like you're a real subject matter expert on this topic of life.
You know, I do believe that history repeats itself. Absolutely. I do believe if we want to stay somewhat sane in this world, we have to know how it functions and how it functioned and how the process of history worked throughout the decades. And because I do believe it all comes back. I do believe that these things that people learned 100 years ago is the same thing we're going to learn today, even though maybe the technology is different. As I've said a million times, is you might have had a rock in your pocket 5,000 years ago, but today it's a phone. But there's not, I mean, as people, we're the same. I believe we're not much different, really. What's your thoughts?
No, I totally agree. History does repeat itself, and human beings repeat themselves. So let's just jump in here. I mean, I think the Battle of Gettysburg is a powerful metaphor on high ground, low ground, and I just actually coined a new term. I'll tell you in a second. But we're going to take it. Gettysburg was 3 days, so I'm going to walk through the 3 days.
Okay.
On day one, which is July 1st, 1863, what happens is the Union Army and the Confederate Army show up. The Confederate Army gets there literally minutes, half an hour before. There's a battle, a little skirmish that takes place. And then, the troops are a little bit behind. These are the people out in front. And the Confederacy loses from a perspective, or actually the Union gains the high ground. So what is the high ground? That's if you're up on top of a hill, right, looking down on people below you. So specifically, I'm going to get a little bit into this here. So there's it in Gettysburg, and I've been there, Cemetery Hill, Cemetery Ridge, and the Round Top. So there's little and big Round Top. So the Union Army takes the high ground on day one. This is super strategic to them winning this battle. Day two, and there's 50,000 Americans that died in this battle, by the way. And that probably doesn't count for people that weren't Americans during the time. But a lot happened in 3 days. The second day, right, the Confederates on the low ground, the Union's on the high ground, the Confederates come in on both flanks, and they try to take Little Round Top because they knew that would split them, and then they would take a focal point, high ground, and then they would not necessarily be on even playing field, but that would be a huge strategic advantage from where they were. They were unable to capture Little Round Top. Then on day three, what happened on day three, Jay Schreck? Do you remember the big event?
Move at Pickett's charge, I believe, from Lee. Is that correct?
Yes. So Pickett's a general, and in this field, it's literally about you got to think field like farming field, 200 yards across, tree lines on both sides. Sorry, hands in here. And then it's about 400 yards in the other direction. This is a huge flat field. In the Confederates, they're lobbing cannons, balls right on the tree line, Union back, and then they just do this all day long to soften. This is what the Confederates do. And then this is Pickett's last stand. Literally, they come out of the tree line and they charge the Union, which was not a good call. They basically got slaughtered. And from this perspective, on day three, we're going to call that the stupid ground. So you got high ground, you got low ground, and then you just got really bad calls. Like hindsight 2020, that was a horrible decision and basically caused them to retreat. And then ultimately they lost the Civil War because of that move. Not the only move, but that strategic loss.
The funny thing is that, so how are you going to wind this back into a spiritual solution to the world in crisis after going to Gettysburg? Put this together for me.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Jay Schreck. That was a tee up. All right. So how does this work in the battlefield of life from playing on the high ground, low ground, and then the stupid ground? And what I've found in life in, let's call it the past handful of months, feel like you can really do some stuff if you're playing from the high ground and you're doing all the right things, you're serving, like things can happen for you. So what I wanted to do is ask you a few questions, Jay Schreck, because out of all my friends, you are a subject matter expert. And I know that you have mentored over hundreds of people in the past couple decades. And you've been with people that are in the low ground. So my question to you, Jay Schreck, is what do you typically see when you're first mentoring a person? You're trying to move them from the low ground to a higher ground. right? What are the common habits, the common trends you see in people that are operating on the low ground?
The thing is, are you at a low enough ground to be willing to want to make a change, right? You're the low ground is whatever you decide your low ground is. Your low ground could be fairly level. Not everybody has to be drugged down to the bottom of the swamp, right? The reality of it is, but wherever you're at in your life, are you willing to decide that the way you're going is not going to be a way that you want to do it and that you want to make a change in life, and you're willing to go to whatever lengths it takes to be able to get out of that low ground, whatever it might be. And that I'd say there's one word, and that is willing. Am I willing to do whatever I need to do to get out from underneath this? Am I willing to go see maybe some counseling? Am I willing to go to the pastor of the church? Am I willing to do something outside of the norm that I have to make a change in my life? But I have to be at a place, a low that I'm willing to go to that length to be able to say, you know what, I do not want to live like this anymore. And anybody, you can, as they say, the elevator, you can get off at whatever floor. You don't have to go to the parking garage, but a lot of people do.
Is there, when you sit down to have coffee with somebody, first off, and you're in a mentoring situation, is there anything you say specifically where you're trying to get to understand if this individual has the will to move from, let's call it a place, it's a metaphor, right? The low ground of, hey, you're in a bad situation personally, could be an event, it could be a period of time. How do you identify if somebody has the will or not? Is that one session for coffee, or is it two? Like, how's that work out?
Well, to me, it's kind of simple. There's two stages, right? There's the talking stage that says, I am willing to do that. Am I willing to do whatever it takes to get out of this place? And then the second thing is the action. Faith without works is dead. I mean, you can have all the faith, but if you don't do the work, if you're not willing to, now, are you willing to go to wherever? Are you willing to go to this church or this counselor or whoever it might be? Are you willing to actually physically go there? Are you willing not only to tell me that you want to change, are you willing to go to wherever you need to go to make this transformation start? Because, you can make a lot of decisions, but decisions don't make you jump. I made a decision. Well, you only made a decision. Did you put action behind it? Are you really willing to go? And, nobody can drive somebody out of that if they're not willing to go. You can tell me all day long how your life is horrible and how miserable it is, but are you willing to get out from underneath this low ground? Are you willing to try something new? Are you willing to be open-minded enough to say that the way that you're living your life is not working? I mean, it's pretty evident to everybody at that step or stage, you're not successful. And are you willing to make the move? The first thing is, I am willing. Second thing is, let me see you be willing, because you're going to make a movement of some type. I'm going to pick up that phone. I'm going to go wherever I need to go. And until that happens, no, I can't do anything. I'm just a guide, Charles. I have no knowledge. I'm just a guide. I've been doing this for a while. All I try to do is work for God and just work through God. I don't have any answers to any of these solutions. The solution is between their God and them. And I believe that. But
So
I can guide them, I guess you could say.
yeah, so I kind of feel like you're saying actions speak louder than words. Is there something that will trigger a person to, like, do you really, like, in sitting down with somebody in 60 minutes, can you tell, like, within the first 5 minutes if they have the will or not?
It didn't take long. I mean, we can always come up with a good story because we're good storytellers, all of us, especially if you've been in a bad place. You got used to telling a lot of stories. Most of them weren't true, but you got used to it. And so did I. I got used to telling these horrible stories that I hope you believe. But the reality of it was, I've had guys that went to prison that said it wasn't that bad. I've had people that say, and I wish I was kidding, right? I wish I was
Perspective.
kidding. And so it's a perception of how low and what you can accept as your bottom, which floor do you want to get off on? My bottom in my life, Charlie, was looking in the mirror and hating who I'd become. I didn't get thrown in jail. I didn't lose things like some people do. It just was that place where I realized that I was phony and I was a fake. And I looked in the mirror and I hated who I'd become. And that was enough for me to go, you know what? I do not want to live like this anymore. Everybody has a different bottom. And that bottom is that place where you're willing to do whatever you need to do to find the help that you need, wherever that might be. But if you're willing, and people don't fail that do the work. They don't. I mean, you can change your life today. And I can look anybody dead square in the eye and say that. But you got to be willing to do the work, and you got to be willing to try something different. And if you're not willing to change, then there ain't a lot you can do. And, not everybody can get out from underneath the low ground. That's the sad part of this.
Yeah.
But my message is they can, but will they? And that question's up between them and their God.
So, we're using the Gettysburg battle as a metaphor, a military strategy. We've talked about high ground being the best place to be, where you can really make stuff happen, serve people, love others. We talked about the low ground, right? That's not a place you want to be working from. And then we've kind of coined picket/charge on this podcast as stupid ground. So when somebody is at, let's call it stupid ground, you're at the very bottom. Where are most people trying to go? Are they trying to go from stupid ground to high ground? Are they trying to go from stupid ground to low ground? What is the mindset of progression to get yourself moving forward?
Well, most people will tell you that they want to get to the high ground. Most people will tell you that I want to climb that hill. I want to get out of this place that I don't like being in. Most of them will tell you that. The only sad part about that is there's only so many that transition by walking. So if you think of it as just a hill that you're on the bottom of it, you got to get to the top. It's a long, steep climb. And you might need a mentor or a guide or a Sherpa to help you get up that hill. Very few people can walk up that hill on their own. That's a whole nother thing as well, is that I need somebody that's already been up there that has come back down here to come get me. And I need to know how to get up that hill, and I need to know how to transition. And also I have to trust the fact that they know what they're talking about because they've been up there. But very few people will make the climb. But my job is not to figure out how many people are going to make the climb. My job is to make myself available. And whether they climb to the top of that hill or not is between them and their God. But I can tell them, if you're willing to change your life and you're willing to go to any lengths, I can tell you, you will. I know that to be a fact. I've seen hundreds of people do it, and I've seen thousands of people fail. But the ones that have done the work always seem to be able to find a way. Now, you have a responsibility when you get up top of that hill, not just to look down and go, wow, Charlie, look how great this is. Kind of like being in Ahwatukee and stand on that mountain and go, man, I live in the greatest place ever, right? But you can't live up there. You got to come back down. Why? Because you have to bring people up that. You've seen what it's like when you're up there, but it's critical that you go back down into the low ground, into the firefight, and try to help as many people as you can to go back up there, because you've been graced. You have the grace of God to be able to get you up there, and he will protect you in that battle if you let him.
This is a metaphor-ic podcast. I liked how you talked about Sherpa. We're talking about mentors, right? But a Sherpa, like, who is, a step in front of you, leading you up there. And the definition of a mentor versus a mentee is just one step in front of that individual. So I really love, from whatever the subject matter, that person needs as far as being an expert. I love the Sherpa metaphoric piece. So, what do you say, shifting gears? We've talked about some of the things to some of the issues and challenges, right? To get from stupid ground to low ground to move up to high ground. What would you say to somebody if you really wanted to say, here's 1, 2, 3 things you should be focusing on now that you've gotten to the low ground or whatever to move to the high ground? What is critical daily habits? What is the rhythm needed to succeed to keep on going to get up to high ground?
You hear a lot of programs out there that talk about living one day at a time. And it's not something that some program took. It's been the way of the world forever, and it is reality. I mean, I can dream about yesterday's day's battle. I can think about tomorrow's battle. But the reality of it is, where do I live? I live in today, only in today, right? And that's the most important thing about staying in this day, is that realizing that when I'm in this way. Now, why would I want to only be in today, Charlie? Because God is present with me right now. I'm not in yesterday and I'm not into tomorrow. So I have God in my life today. And that's going to be the difference in my life. And then I'm a weird believer in meditation. I believe that meditation is, and it's not the thing that people think about when they think about humming and floating around. You know, I sit down, I get quiet, and I pray. And when I pray, I'm talking with God. And when I meditate, I'm listening to what he tells me, right? So I take that. If you take 1 minute, take 30 seconds, take 2 minutes, and then get it to 15 or 20 minutes, plan your day out, get right with God, get programmed, and then make your bed. Now, people are like, make your bed. What is this, right? It's the first step in a discipline that's going to be critical for me to be able to maintain this lifestyle, is that I always know the day that I make my bed, I'm going to have probably a fairly serene day, because that means I've checked in with God. And if I want to keep this lifestyle, that's what I need to do. And throughout the day, when I get into worry, or I have trouble at work, or I have somebody cut me off in traffic, I ask God to take that from me, remove that from me, and ask, who can I help? And stay out of self, because self-centeredness is the sabotage of the war. My selfish self-centeredness is what's going to get me outside of God, because when I'm thinking of me, I'm not thinking of you. And if I'm not thinking about you, I'm not thinking about God.
Amen. So we're going to break that down, because you talked about some real applications, but I want to talk about 4 different tactics. And I want you to force rank these, 1 being the most important, down to 4 being the least important. Some of these we've talked about, but it's almost like a summary piece. Here we go. Practice positive affirmation. Develop daily habits for success. Cultivate supportive relationships in God. Again, that is practicing positive affirmation. That's replacing negative talk, self-talk, with encouraging statements. So it's basically like talking to yourself. Developing daily habits, prioritizing your time, cultivating relationships, and God. Those 4. Force rank them for me.
God always goes first. Without God, I have nothing. So then the second thing is, how do I get God? Well, I get God by creating daily habits, right? I have to get this habit informing, as I talked about, the meditation and the prayer and the making your bed, right? So my goal was God. Now, how do I find God? How do I get to God? Well, first I have to make a relationship with God. God's not God's within me, and I have to get that relationship. Well, how do I do that? Through prayer and meditation, which is a habit, right? And then when I go out into the world, I need to have people to talk with. I need to have people to be responsible for, and to help and to be helped. I have to have these relationships. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 all work together with me in a process of doing the work. But without God, I don't have any direction at all. And you may not know what God is to begin with either, but just know it's not you, and that's a good start. It's not you. Now let's work through that.
So I have you as God, a number one, numero uno. You don't have faith in a creator, you are in trouble. For me, faith in Jesus, right, pulls me through. Number 2, you had as cultivate supportive relationships. So this is kind of this mentor-mentee, the Sherpa, having somebody pull you up the mountain. And probably pride is a big issue there, I would think, to say that somebody could help you, right? It's a pride factor. And then 3, developing daily habits. I know you like prayer and meditation in the morning, and making your bed.
Yeah, I have that second. And then
you had daily habits. You had daily habits second. Yes, all right, sorry. Second. Then you had cultivate relationships. And then what do you think about practicing positive affirmation? So that's your 4.
Yes. I have to be in action to have those affirmations. I have to have got out of the house. I've had to start to work. I've had to start to experience the ups and downs of life. And then I have to have my waves in my brain go from a negative to a positive. And I work through that through the process of being in tune with God throughout the day. And the great thing is, at any time, God's with me all the time. At any time, I can stop my day and I can restart it. I can stop and say, hey, God, I'm in a situation I'm not comfortable in. Will you take this from me? Would you help me? The thing is, people don't ask God for help. And that's what's so funny is, I had this joke that I said the other night with some people, is that, I got to stop taking 1 through 7 away from God and only giving God 8, 9, and 10. And that being the high, like the hard stuff. I'm only going to give God the hard stuff. Well, why don't I give God 1 through 7? Why don't I give him the craziest? I mean, all of it, right? Why don't I say anything that I got going on? Well, God, what do you think? Why do I think that I'm going to be able to manage 1 through 7? And then, well, I only give God the hard stuff. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose of having God and Jesus in your life than to ask for help.
Yeah. So we're heading up on the 2-minute warning, but I have to ask you this question. You just hit me with something. In our culture, like let's use on 1 to 10. You meet with 100 people. I would think out of the 4 we just said, and you put 4, the power of positive thinking. I rephrase that from practicing positive affirmation. The power of positive thinking. How many people do you meet with that think that they can use the power of positive thinking to get them out of the place that they're in right now?
The people that can get out of that place don't need to talk to me. If you're able to get out of that hole with positive thinking, and there's nothing wrong with that if you can, but you don't need to talk to me, because you're just going to walk out of it. You're going to figure out a way to read that self-help book, and it's going to work for you. And that does work. I mean, I'm not like thinking there's one way to do anything. Yeah. Some people can go to Barnes and Noble and get a book that says, hey, this is how you get out of the bottom of this. And they read it, they walk out of it. I'm only here for the other 99 out of 100, not the one. And I hope they do. I hope you could pick up a book and walk out of it. That's just not my experience.
Got it. Yeah. You need for me too, I think having mentor and mentee, especially if you're trying to move out of like stupid ground, low ground, and you really want to get to high ground. And once you get to high ground, right, I think you realize that it's not about yourself, right? It's about serving others, right? And contributing to help others, especially from whatever your low ground was placed. Like God put you in a place to recognize, hey, I have been there. Who wants to talk to somebody that has no idea what you're going through? I think it's so great when you have somebody that uses their challenges, their low ground, and then they're able to talk to somebody one-on-one. So, hey, we're jumping into the 2-minute warning right now. And this is how I'm going to close out this. So we're living in a world of chaos. There's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people in stupid ground. There's a lot of people in low ground. And my prayer is that the majority of people would be coming from a high ground. I think we would have a different culture. But I wanted to give some biblical references here in my a minute of the 2-minute warning. First off, I'm going to go Old Testament. David, he was a warrior. We talked about battlefield. Psalm 18:33. He makes, and he's talking about God. This is David. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He causes me to stand on heights. So we're going to the heights thing.
The high ground.
I thought that was cool. And then I'm going to use one last scripture, right? This is from you get to the high ground. This is more on the serving piece. So it's Matthew 5:14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, invest in others, Sherpa others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I feel that's a good place for me to end there, Jay Shrek.
I think it's a great place for both of us to end at that spot. I think that's awesome, and I appreciate you. I appreciate this journey we're on, and because what we're trying to do is trying to get to the top of the hill, right? That's all we're trying to do. Get to the top of the hill, and then we get there, stay there for a little bit, and then we'll go back down and see who else we can help. And that's it, right? Exactly. And one day you might have to haul me up there. I mean, it's not like just because you know the path, it doesn't mean it doesn't change. So there you are.
You are the Billy Goat, my friend. Remember those hiking days?
And those days are wandering past. But
7 summits, baby.
Exactly. Well, Mr. Smith, I will see you, sir. And it's been a pleasure as always. And we'll close with this. Thank you, sir. Remember, whatever's happened to you, wherever you've been, it doesn't matter. Jesus still loves you. And stay strong and climb the mountain. All you got to be doing is be willing. Adios, amigos.